your girl, Umar, the I Am Butterfly, holding you down. And I have a special guest in the building. You heard him last Wednesday, yes, live in stereo. I'm talking about the Prince of Pan-Africanism, Dr. Umar Johnson. Welcome, Dr. Umar.
Thank you, Queen. Glad to be here.
Wonderful to have you. And also in the building with us as a guest is Mark Anthony Middleton. Yes, Mark is here on Saturdays. You can catch him on the Table from 11 to 12. How you doing today, Mark?
Peace and blessings. Good afternoon, Choice FM family.
Peace and blessings to you, brother. Dr. Umar, I know people are excited about Tuesday night. It's going down right here at the High Tide Heritage Center in Durham. People, I know you're ready. So what can the people expect?
Primarily, I want to deal with the miseducation machine, making sure parents understand the psychoacademic holocaust against not only our boys, but even our girls now. So I want to go in depth about special education, the learning disability, what it is not, the rise in autism amongst black boys, intellectual disability, ADHD, psychiatric meds, school law, parent rights, etc., etc. I really want North Carolina's parents to walk away from tomorrow's lecture with a very strong understanding of what they can do to empower their children in the school system.
Yes, I think going into 2017, we have a incredible 4 years ahead of us. If Donald Trump is in office for 4 years, I don't know if he'll last that long, but what's your look on that?
Well, from an educational standpoint, I think that President-elect Trump is going to continue a lot of the public school disintegration strategies that we saw introduced under President George Bush, and ironically, continued under Barack Obama. And so when you look at his selection for Secretary of Education, Ms. Betsy DeVos, she's someone who introduced charter schools to Michigan. Mm-hmm. She's someone who helped destroy the public school system of Detroit, Michigan,
yes,
where I'll be going to when I leave you guys.
Okay.
And so looking at her track record, I can tell why she was put in office, and that is to continue the public school shutdown movement, intensify the charter school movement, and also give birth to the school vouchers movement, which is going to intensely defund black inner city public schools to the detriment of our children.
Yeah, they call Detroit public school system the wastelands after
it's
she
sitting
came in
all
there.
over. In fact, I'm going up there to look at some of those abandoned buildings to see if one of them would fit for my school for black boys that I'm building.
Absolutely. What's your take on that, Mark Anthony?
Thank you.
Of course, education runs very closely with economics as well. And on tomorrow night when you give your speech, you'll be standing in the epicenter of what was once considered Black Wall Street. I heard you make a very, what I thought was a cogent statement some time ago regarding the willingness to give us loans for cars as opposed to businesses.
Yes.
Would you say a little more about economics, and particularly since this president?
African Americans can qualify for student loans any day of the week. You can qualify for home loans about 3 days out of the week. You can qualify for car loans about 5 days out of the week, but you can't qualify for a business loan 7 days out of the week. And so when you look at the fact that they will finance our education, finance our automobiles, and finance our homes, you're looking at a situation where business wants to invest in long-term debt.
Yes.
Because the truth of the matter is we have 2 million African Americans with master's and doctorate degrees who cannot find work. 2 million. So we're overeducated and underemployed. How can you be both overeducated and underemployed? Because they're investing in the debt. Chances are once you graduate from college, you won't be able to find a job to pay off that debt. You know that once you drive the car off, the lot is only worth about 50% of its original appraised value. And even with our homes, with the variable mortgages, we're seeing a whole bunch of black folks being led to foreclosure, which is being strategically engineered to take back the homes that we paid 10, 20 years worth of mortgage on. So it's crystal clear that the banks only want to finance black debt. They're not interested in financing black financial success.
And that's law. We got more coming up with Dr. Umar Johnson and Mark Anthony Middleton, and of course your girl Umar, the I Am Butterfly, live right here on Choice FM 9210 and 98.3.
This is new music. Play that, yo. Choice FM. New music, people. Choice FM.
Choice FM 9210 and 98.3. Your girl Umar, the I Am Butterfly. You're tuned in to Butterfly Radio. And I told you I have a special guest in studio. That's right, the Prince of Pan-Africanism, Dr. Umar Johnson. And people, in case you don't know, it's going down tomorrow, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Doors open at 4. That's right, at the High Tide Heritage Center, 804 Old Fairville Street in Durham. From grade school to the graveyard is how it's titled. Psychoacademic Holocaust Against Black black boys. And he's going to be speaking, so make sure you get your tickets now, all right? I got Mark Anthony Middleton in the building with me as well. And Mark, we left off, you had a question for Dr. Umar.
Absolutely. Thank you, sis. I wanted to jump back into this economic piece. The show that I host on the table is about solutions. And I heard your diagnosis of overeducation and underemployment.
Yes.
What's the prescription?
Well, look at the etiology. The etiology of the overeducation and underemployment goes back to the 1970s, 1980s. The United States government came into the inner city black communities and they started deindustrializing the inner cities, and they started deindustrializing the inner city high schools. For example, many of us have grandparents and great-grandparents who lived a decent life, many of whom didn't even have a high school diploma.
Preach.
Because back then, the inner city was industrialized, so you could get a factory job working with your hands. You often dropped out of school early to help your parents pay the bills by working at the factory. So you did not need a college education or even a high school diploma 50 years ago to live a comfortable life. However, beginning in the 70s, they started taking the factories out of the black community and out of places in our society that were adjacent or convenient to the black community. And then they went into the high school and started deindustrializing the high school.
Yes.
50 years ago, you had carpentry, auto body, auto mechanic, plumbing, electrician, masonry. There were over 15 different trades that the average inner city high school had. We weren't even thinking about college. We were thinking about gainful employment using our hands through the certifications and licenses. Well, going to the inner cities now, you'd be hard pressed to find a high school that offers more than cosmetology or maybe some minor computer networking. That's why we have the mass incarceration against black males. The mass incarceration is an outgrowth of the deindustrialization of the inner city high schools.
Church. Enough said. No, seriously. I mean, you remember that shop in school, home economics, all those programs.
And it was required.
It was required. Right. Yeah. I mean, where are these things now? And you're right. In case you were not, the type to go to college, at least you had some type of trade to start with when you went out into the world. Absolutely missing now. So.
Oh, without question, we got to have it. Now, the black community played a role in this too, because after the Civil Rights Bill, rest in peace to Dr. King, this is his day. Well, yesterday was his day, but this is the day that he's honored. After the Civil Rights Bill, black people felt that it was time for our children to stop using their hands and start using their heads. So we took them away from, we influenced them not to get into the building trades, and we start sending everybody off to college. Yeah. Well, that was not a good move. Why? Because we sent everyone to college. It was okay to send some, but you need a division of labor. You still need electricians. You still need plumbers. Every doctor works in an office that was built by tradesmen. Every engineer works in an office that was built by tradesmen. So when you look at downtown Raleigh or Durham now, most of the large-scale building projects are being created by who? Mexican labor, Chinese labor, white labor, and unemployed black men with college degrees are sitting there watching everyone get paid off of their tax dollars. We need to bring it back. Bring the trades back.
All right. You heard it here first. And like I said, people, it's going down tomorrow. Make sure you're in the building. Dr. Umar, tell them how they can get tickets now.
Tickets, they can get them at princeofpanafricanism.eventbrite.com. And we spell Africa with a K. Again, princeofpanafricanism.eventbrite.com. I also believe if they go to eventbrite.com and type in events for Durham, North Carolina, I think my event is at the top of the page.
All right.
So they'll see it that way. 12 and under are free. 65 and older are also free. So children and elders do not have to pay. They just have to show up.
All right. Make sure you're there, people. Again, it's going down at the High Tide Heritage Center, 804 Old Fayetteville Road, Fayetteville Street in Durham. Okay. Got more coming up with Dr. Umar Johnson and my brother Mark Anthony Middleton. I'm going to get that right in a minute. Right here on Choice FM 9210 and 98.3. Keeping you informed.
Come experience Raleigh premier hookah and entertainment lounge.
Fly Radio in studio with me right now, Dr. Umar Johnson and Mark, and I keep wanting to call you Doctor too, Mark Anthony Middleton. That's right. And you can check him out on the table Saturdays from 11 to 12 right here on Choice FM. All right. And I want to talk about post-Trump, the rise of white supremacy, Dr. Umar. Why do you think it's so prominent and in your face post-Trump?
I think it is because the Obama experiment, and it wasn't experiment.
Okay.
America is a traditionally racist white patriarchal society by putting Barack Obama in office. Although he is biracial, he's still African because the African DNA predominates.
That's right.
It was still an experiment, and I think white America grew increasingly impatient at having to look at a black man in the White House. One thing we have to understand, a lot of white America is poor. A lot of white America is broke. And for a lot of white Americans, the only quote-unquote trump card they have is their superiority socially in comparison to African Americans. So that white privilege that they enjoy at our expense is the one thing that most white folks have that still gives them a sense of being above us in American society. When you put Barack Obama in the White House, you took that away. And so a lot of the police brutality that we saw, a lot of the unbridled acts of racism we saw during the Obama administration, that was retaliation by white America for the fact that they were forced to deal with someone they really did not want. The reason Trump was elected as a repudiation of the first black president, not a repudiation of the Democratic Party, because even a lot of Democrats voted for Trump.
That's true.
Women voted for Trump more so than Hillary, traditionally speaking.
That's
so
true.
It wasn't so much about Democrats versus Republicans. It was really about white people versus everyone else. They wanted a return to classic white racism, and that's exactly what they have. The Donald Trump victory was a victory for white nationalism.
Wow. You want to comment on that, Mark Anthony?
Absolutely. I want to. The experiment. Is there anything about our experience in this country that is not experimental?
Powerful question. I don't think it is. I think everything would meet the definition of an experiment, especially when you look at how they intensify the effort to control, reduce, and eliminate African Americans. And I think it's very important that we understand the climate, the political time of day that we're living in. We've had 4 great periods in our history. Our first period was a fight for humanity. And a lot of African Americans forget this. Before we could fight to end slavery, we spent the first 200 years in America fighting to prove that we were people. We forget that. There was a fight to establish our humanity.
That's
because
right.
we were considered monkeys and chimpanzees and gorillas and primates. We had to spend 2 centuries fighting to prove we were people.
Yeah.
Then the second movement was for liberty. Then the third movement was for equality. And now this is the fourth, survival. This is not about oppression no more. This is about eliminating us. This is why abortion is such a big issue, and people fail to realize this, but we kill more babies in the stomach than we do on the corners. Most people think black on black fratricide is the leading cause of unnatural death. It's not. It's abortion. And so we have to look at that in the history of abortions. Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, Bill Gates' father, who was in charge of Planned Parenthood for one of America's states.
Wow.
So you have to look at the population control efforts of America and how poverty is used as a weapon to convince black women to stop reproducing themselves.
So powerful. And with that being said, what do you think is going to be the solution for these cop killings that's been going on? Do you think there will be any change? Can we look forward to change? Or, of course, we need to be the first part of change as a people.
As a student of history, I have to be honest. And when you study our history with America, the only time we've ever gotten them to back off of an aggressive white supremacist campaign was when we put together our own aggressive campaign for justice. Look at Dr. King, the civil rights movement. They had to face the dogs, the water hoses. I will say that there is no solution to police violence against blacks, police genocide, that is based on the vote, that is based on praying, that's based on marching. I think black America have let white police go so far. They've grown so spoiled with their ability to get away with killing us that it's going to take a serious social catastrophe to bring about a serious change in police genocide that's going to force the government and black leadership to sit down and say, okay, we have a problem, let's do something about it. But until we push back, this will not stop, because as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. The Congressional Black Caucus is lying to black people by telling us we can vote away police genocide. Nothing in Congress will stop this. It's going to take a street-based movement.
You heard it here first, people.
Break that down for us.
We're going to break all that down coming back up, all right, people? I know it is a powerful conversation going on. Make sure you're tuned in. Tell a friend. ILoveChoiceFM.com, all right? Dr. Umar Johnson and my man Mark Anthony Middleton from On the Table right here on Choice FM with your girl Emanata I'm Butterfly. You're tuned in to Butterfly Radio.
This is my city. Rocky Mountain's Choice. Yeah. Choice FM.
Butterfly, Dr. Umar Johnson, and Mark Anthony Middleton. Mark, when we left out, you had a question for Dr. Umar.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit, Doctor, because one of your monikers is the Prince of Pan-Africanism. And for our listeners who are unfamiliar with you or just being introduced to you, give us a primer, give us a working definition of what Pan-Africanism is and what that should mean to us.
Certainly, Pan-Africanism could probably be summed up in 4 quick principles. Number 1, all people of African descent represent one human family. So whether we live in Nigeria, whether we live in North Carolina, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Jamaica, Canada, Toronto, England, we're all one family. And we identify on the level of African family first. So for example, if you're Muslim, you're an African who happens to be a Muslim. You're not a Muslim who happens to be an African. Our racial heritage is more important than our religious identity. So with Pan-Africanists, we're African first, which is the way everyone else is. European Jews are Jews first. Arabs are Arabs first. Chinese are Chinese first. The religion is important, but it does not supersede one's cultural history. So that's number 1. Number 2, we believe that as Africa goes, so goes all of Africa's descendants. So when we look at the problems that's faced by Black America, we would say part of the reason we haven't made more progress is because we're fighting an independent struggle that is isolated from the greater African struggle. Marcus Garvey said a strong man is strong everywhere. So when you look at Chinese are respected in Asia, Chinese are respected in America, Chinese are respected in the UK because China is. You see, you can never be stronger than your international homeland. So we would argue that Black America will never get the respect we feel that we're entitled to until we work to give Africa the respect that she's entitled to. Number 3, as Pan-Africanists, we believe that we rise together or we don't rise at all. The struggle to emancipate and empower African people is an international struggle that we must participate in and collaborate with other African nations and communities around the world. White supremacy is global. So how can Black America defeat a global enemy alone? How can Black Jamaica, how can the Black UK defeat a global enemy alone? So we believe it has to be all of us or nothing. And the last principle of Pan-Africanism is that what is to be done for African people must be done by African people. Self-determination is essential in all things for mutual progress. So we're not necessarily in support of grants, handouts, white participation in our organizations. We don't believe in that. If it's for Black people, it needs to be done for Black people and by Black people.
Now, taking all that together as a collective system of thought and philosophy, because what I tell my listeners all the time, if it's on their heart, it's on the table. If it's on your mind, it's on the table. And my phone is blowing up. Okay. And so I just want to put this to you real talk. Is there room in that movement for brothers and sisters that are gay or lesbian? Because you get knocked sometimes as being really hard on the LGBTQ.
A little controversy right there.
Well, let me clarify. It's on some of them may be listening. Nah, good question. Number 1, I love all African people, gay or straight. At the same time, as a nationalist, we are responsible for looking out for what's in the best interest of our people. Okay, that supersedes any relationships we may have with individuals. All of us have had gay members in our family. You understand? We know gay people in the Black community. That's not new. But as a nationalist, politically speaking, I have to defend that position that I think is in the best interest of future generations. Because of that, I do not support nor do I condone same-sex relationship. Do I hate? No. Do I advocate harm? No. Do I advocate discrimination? Never. I'll die for a gay Black brother like I'll die for a gay straight brother, but don't ask me to condone the lifestyle, because nationalism is about nature and the preservation of our people. 2 men cannot reproduce, nor can 2 women. So there's no way I can advocate that if I'm looking out for the best interests of Black people, especially Black women. Only 25% of Black women get married. 1 out of every 4. She is the least likely female in American society to ever be proposed to. By advocating homosexuality amongst Black boys, guess what you're doing? You're reducing the available pool of Black men that sisters need to build strong families with. So for me, how can you be pro-LBGT and pro-traditional Black family at the same time when one is clearly a threat to the other?
That answered the question, right? And so in that, I'm not offended, not at all. I think you got to stand for something or fall for anything. And you cannot be offended by somebody that has something that they stand for. And if that's what you stand for, you should not be offended by that. And I think people are made to feel like a hater. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. I think part of it is the propaganda from the LBGT movement that seeks to castigate and demonize anyone who disagrees with the relationship. And my response to that is this. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not aware of any social phenomenon ever in American history where if you disagree with it, you were considered a hater of that population. For example, Muslims don't agree with Christians,
right?
But they don't hate them,
right?
Democrats don't agree with Republicans, but they don't hate them,
right?
But with the LBGT movement, if you do not condone this,
you're a bully.
You're a bully. You hate us. You want to hurt us. You want to get rid of us. I've never advocated that.
Right.
I simply don't agree with that. And if you want me to respect your right to practice it, you should respect my right to disagree with it.
There you go.
What would you say to them that say that the assertion of the definition of family as traditional, by definition, negates them from participating in one of the most fundamental human partnerships or human activities on earth, that by defining them out of family in some ways mitigates one of the principles of nationalism, which is the full embrace of their humanity? What would you say?
I would say to that, from an African cultural perspective, marriage is a right, but it is only a right that can be entered into between a man and a woman. From our cultural milieu, we believe that the Creator created the universe with a perfect balance of masculine and feminine energy. For the sun, there's the moon.
Indeed.
For water, there is earth. For yin, there is yang. Even in every atom, there's a positive charge and a negative. The feminine and masculine manifest in everything. And just like in the electric world, if you put two positives together, you can create chaos. If you put two negatives together, you can create chaos. So when we look at the basic building blocks of the universe, it's based on a balance of masculine and feminine energy. Now, let me take you to the psychotherapeutic. In working with lesbians and homosexuals, first of all, most homosexual males I've ever worked with in my life, and I've been doing this almost 20 years, 95% of them were molested by men prior to the age of 12. Speaking of black, I can't speak for white, but speaking of our men, for 20 years of work, 95% of them have been molested by males. And if you do a survey of gay black men who are honest about it, you're going to find that most of them, that was the trigger for their homosexuality. For female lesbian clients that I've worked with, the trigger was abuse by black men, sexual or verbal, or growing up in a home where they witnessed their mothers or significant female relatives being abused by men. And what I see the difference between the two, black gay men and lesbian black women, is with the lesbian black females, they're more willing to admit I wasn't born this way. Sisters will tell you, no, I was not born gay. I know this. I chose it because I got tired of getting my ass whipped. Where the black man needs to deny that. Why? Because it's very painful. Even as a gay man, it is very painful to admit that another man took your innocence like that as a child, because you have to go back into that memory, you have to go back into that hurt, you have to go back into that pain. So guess what? It's a lot more feasible and less emotionally challenging for me to simply say I was born this way. This way we never have to go back into the triggers that brought this on, because I never want to deal with that rape. I never want to deal with that molestation. I never want to deal with the fact that my mother knew that it was Uncle Johnny who was molesting me and did nothing about it.
All right, Dr. Umar Johnson, Mark Anthony Middleton. Such a pleasure, Dr. Umar. You can check out Dr. Umar this Tuesday, January 17th at the Hayti Heritage Center, 804 Old Fayetteville Street in Durham. Psychoacademic Holocaust Against Black Boys, from the grade school to the graveyard. Dr. Umar, it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you in the studio. Thank you so much for coming through. Mark Anthony Middleton, make sure you check him out on the table Saturdays at 11 to 12, correct?
You heard?
All right. Thanks for having you guys. And it's going down right here on the People Station. You already know what it is. We are Choice FM 9210 and 98.3. Thanks for rocking with me. You're inside Butterfly Radio.
WRSV Elm City Road, Durham. WDUR, W252 DK Durham. Choice FM 92.1 and 98.3 Durham Chapel Hill. Come experience